Welcome to In Their Own Words, AINA's new video series of informal interviews with people who are active participants in helping to craft the post-2015 development agenda. In this, our second video in the series, we spoke with Katarina de Alberqueque, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human right to water and sanitation. We asked her for her thoughts on the post-2015 agenda, water, sanitation, and inequalities.
That I was appointed by the main body of the UN in the area of human rights, the UN Human Rights Council, to monitor the way in which the world is complying with its human rights on the one hand. So I have a monitoring function, but I also have a promotion function and awareness raising function among different stakeholders, states, but also UN agencies, NGOs, the private sector, etc., to promote the human rights to water and sanitation. So I promote, but then I also monitor to see if the promotion is working.
Back what you're doing into our world, which is inequalities. How does it relate?
Well, it relates a lot, not because when I was appointed, I decided from the beginning that the issue of inequalities and combating inequalities would be at the center of my mandate, but, well, I was forced to it because of what I saw when I went on mission for the UN. And I systematically started seeing that it were always the same groups of people that were not benefiting from progress, that were being excluded. And each time I prepared for a mission, I knew beforehand, and even before starting to study the situation in the country, when I started studying the situation, I only got a confirmation of those people I had to pay more attention to. The people living in rural areas, the people living in informal settlements, the indigenous people, people belonging to minorities, to a lower caste, speaking a different language, belonging to a different ethnic minority, etc. They were always the same. And I think that also the work that I was asked to do by the UN on the MDGs and on making recommendations to promote the realization of the MDGs also made me realize that the current development agenda that we have is promoting inequalities. So it is giving, I always say, it gives carte blanche to states to continue to discriminate, to continue to forget, to continue business as usual, pretending that certain groups of the population don't exist or that by miracle progress will trickle down and will benefit them, which is not the case. What we have been seeing is exactly the opposite, a bigger gap and bigger inequalities between those who have and those who have not benefited from progress. So some of the things that I can do and that I do is, namely when I go on mission to countries, and I've visited 12 countries up until now, is to make recommendations to governments on how to prioritize these people, the people who have been traditionally forgotten, how to prioritize them, how to devise and actions, plans of action, strategies, policies, even at the budget level.
Right. So what are some of the initiatives that you're undertaking in your sphere of water and sanitation to address some of these inequalities?
Well, I try now. When I go on mission, it's always something that I have on my agenda. So when I meet with ministers or even prime ministers, when I meet with people at the technical level, it's always an issue that I bring. The question of discrimination against the homeless, against people in informal settlements. Sometimes they pretend to ignore. And sometimes I think, well, I hope that it provokes in them, it forces them to think about these people differently and to think about them as human beings, as all of us, and as people who have a right to be lifted up. And so, of course, I am not a UN agency. I have limited resources. So much of what I try to do is through advocacy. Hence, this opportunity to address you is excellent for me, because what I try to be is a Socratic flight, bringing the issues, making people discuss these issues, and making people ask questions. Because I think that's more about the work that I do, and by asking questions, you identify patterns of discrimination, and you start asking yourself, oh, it's true, because the 5% in my country that don't have access to water and sanitation, maybe they have a different skin color, maybe they are migrants, maybe they belong to an ethnic minority. Well, and these questions lead to certain answers that hopefully will lead to action. I would like to have a global equality goal, a global goal aiming at eliminating inequalities. I think that goal would have to be, it could be limited to looking at issues of, income, even looking at gender, some basic things. And then what I want is to include a commitment to eliminate inequalities under each other of the remaining goals.
You've given us a fantastic overview of what you've done, and this is a very unique way of looking at inequalities.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking this time. And you can make your concluding statement to our network, whatever you want to say.
I would, since you are 6,000 committed people to putting an end to inequalities in this world, transform yourself in even bigger champions, lobby your governments, make alliances with other NGOs that do not necessarily have a focus on inequalities, but that work in other sectors of development, make alliances, and in order to making sure that your governments come to New York to the negotiations of the post-2015 agenda and commit themselves to ending inequalities. I think that what we had for the MDGs, for the current development agenda, has been more of a declaration of principles which has not transformed itself in anything concrete. We made that mistake, we cannot repeat it. And we have to make sure that after 2015 we have clear commitments from the governments of the world to put an end to these human rights violations and end inequality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.